on the job training is certainly trumping the school part.
Yeah. No, and would you say that you would have been creative regardless of if Paul was willing to? If you think back to your young self, do you think that you still would have probably found a way to get mentorship from someone if you needed it?
I'd like to think so. Yeah. But definitely there was a feeling of connection and comfort level with Paul, whereas some of the other advisors, I felt a little bit more intimidated by.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of that came from maybe you sensing that they didn't necessarily want to spend the time with you?
It was probably a little bit two-parted. It was a little bit on me, again, having that mindset and that feeling of, hey, I need to prove it to you.
Okay.
Before I'm going to, lean on you to give me advice and guidance.
Okay.
But then there was also, certain people in the office that there was just kind of this arrogance or smugness where you just felt like, oh gosh, I can't be bothered, or I can't bother that person. Right.
Yeah.
Paul didn't have that. So again, as you kind of fast forward a little bit, that is the team environment and the culture that we have, strive to replicate is, this open door policy. We're all going to grow together. We're all going to get in the trenches together and just do this. And I'm no different than any one other member on my team.
Yeah. No, and I want to now start to get into what that transition kind of looked like as you went from solely being responsible for yourself to now getting into a leadership role and now thinking about other people executing on your behalf and a number of different things where you have to have some trust in people. What was that transition? What did that transition look like for you? First off, did it start? How many people were working for you when you first started, or when did that happen in regards to when you joined in the partnership?
Yeah. So the way it works in Merrill's culture is the more business and the more production you do, the more support staff you get.
Okay.
So back in the
okay. So it's rewarded almost for
exactly. So back in the early days, it used to be that Paul and I would share a client associate, and we might share that person with 2 or 3 other advisors. And as you hit certain levels, then you get rewarded one individually, and you might get 2. So as we think about scaling the business, definitely bringing in the right people has helped us do that. Riley, she is a graduate of Michigan State University. She's been with the team for about 8 years. And that certainly added a different element to the team, because now we went from 2 male practitioners to adding in that female element.
Yeah.
And, not every personality meshes well with another. So we felt, strategically that it would be important to have different viewpoints, personalities, and, we found that in a young woman in Riley.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what that piece looked like, because you start in a position where you're responsible for yourself. Mm-hmm. And it's really easy to count, especially when you start to get good at what you're doing. I would assume that it's pretty easy to rely on yourself because you know what to expect. You know you're going to deliver. You're experienced in the field. You start to gain some serious confidence at that point. Tell us when you kind of had to take a step back in terms of gaining your first leadership position and you had to start being responsible for someone else. What was that like? Emotionally, what did that feel like? Mentally, what was that like for you?
Yeah, so I'm the youngest of all my siblings, but it almost feels like, if I had to envision having a younger sibling and taking that person under your wings. Yeah. So again, it's a lot of time, mentoring, them asking questions, having that open forum, and just letting that person learn from you and see you in action, see how you run meetings, see how you make calls. Lots of just, time off the books, so to speak, if you will.
Yeah. And tell me this, were you nervous when you made that transition? Because you, like I said, it was a big difference. You go from only having to worry about yourself to, okay, I've got to worry about someone else at this point in time. Was that something where, you're completely changing your schedule, I would assume, at that point?
Yeah, I don't know so much nervous, but certainly that sense of responsibility, yeah. Right? So, trying to do anything within my power to coach that person up, to give them good leadership and guidance so that they're successful And in turn, you end up scaling your business and you get some success out of it as well.
And that's what I was going to say right off the rip when you said that did that almost help you up your game when you know that someone's watching and trying to learn from you? Would you say that there was a touch of that happening, or?
I do. Yeah. So one of the things that recently stuck with me going into this new leadership capacity at the office, one of the elder advisors had told me, goes, well, now all eyes are on you. Yeah. So definitely I do feel that sense of, hey, I gotta, really up my game. And again, it goes back to, I can't ask you to do something that I'm not practicing myself.
Oh, that's so awesome. And I have to imagine too, even though you were quote unquote teaching that individual, I'm sure you've learned a number of things from Riley that you're like, I'm supposed to be the teacher here and I'm learning just as, is that true?
I full-heartedly believe in that young people teach us more than we teach them. Yep. Wow. Whether it's technology, Riley actually had a hospitality background. So in terms of her client service and her responsiveness to clients and the way that she made financial planning feel like an experience was something that I certainly took away from her.
That's amazing. And I think something huge for people to take away is just the humility to realize that just because you've gained or grown to a certain level doesn't by any means mean that you're done learning, right? There's so much more to be learned. And as you said, when you were at the peak of, okay, now I'm gaining a new leadership role, you're still learning more than you ever did. So, I mean, that's great to hear. Yeah. So I'd love to get more into now kind of how things have scaled to where they're at today, right? So Riley was she the first one after?
Riley was the third advisor.
Third advisor, okay.
In that point in time, we probably had, I would say, 1.5 support associates. So a half, meaning that half that person's time was devoted specifically to our team.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And what was your capacity like at that point in time? What were your days like? What were you running meetings at a certain point in time? And because again, these are all new things that you wouldn't have been responsible for when you were just a solo person.
Yeah. So still very much working long and hard hours, probably about 8 to 6 at that point. Riley spent a lot of her time in Bank of America, so her kind of upbringing was different than mine in the sense that she sat physically in a Bank of America center.
Oh, okay, cool.
And she'd help them with banking needs. And then she would also try to convert these people into wealth management clients.
Very cool.
So it was a little bit of uncharted territory for us. Because first and foremost, I think that the mindset of someone that traditionally goes in the bank is different than a brokerage client. Bank clients tend to be more conservative, more risk adverse, used to, fixed products, and in our world, kind of night and day, right?
Yeah. And so this just kind of triggered my brain here a little bit with where you obviously started and what company you ended up choosing. Mm-hmm. How important do you feel that specifically, because I've had this conversation a number of times with several different people that we've interviewed. How important would you say the company is versus who you're directly going to be working with or working under or your direct management, right? Because I think there's value in both of those two things. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, it could be a fantastic company that maybe doesn't have a great leader at that point in time or a great direct management to where you're going to be working, and vice versa, right? So there could be a company that isn't as big or isn't as credible as another, but also could have an amazing support system or staff that you could be working under. So could you talk about the balance of how you kind of would want to navigate that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you hit it on the nail on the head, right? It's a balance. So first and foremost, I think it ultimately comes down to the individual. If you're going to have success at place A, I think you're going to have success at place B. But I will say that as a young person where you're green and you don't have experience, I think that the brand and the platform is extremely powerful. And when I graduated school and started at Merrill right out of the gates, I remember being extremely grateful for the opportunity because I felt like I had landed the best brand within financial services.
Yeah, you hit it right in the head too. I mean, that I have to imagine that especially in your industry when you're already feeling like you're going to struggle to have credibility because of your age and in a number of different reasons, that's got to be a huge thing to at least be able to stand behind, to say that, hey, they wouldn't have hired me if I wasn't someone that was worth working with.
Exactly. Yep. And we always talk about, what other business could you kind of walk into day one, not have any capital outlay, where you can just have all the technology, tools, real estate, infrastructure at your disposal, where you can just kind of hit the ground running and start and grow a business. Yeah. And I think that's what, Merrill within financial services provides.
Yeah. And I'd like to hear a little bit about actually how you chose this industry in particular compared to a number of other ways where you could have applied the same types of skills that you're referring to, right? Hitting the phones could be applied to a million different industries. You could have sold real estate. You could have done a number of different things, right? And so what attracted you to this industry in particular?
Yeah, I always felt that it was high pace, and that was good for my personality. I always had kind of an affinity for numbers. My dad was a tax attorney, so I used to think that was my way of getting the numbers, but I soon realized that I also wanted the aspect of people and relationships and the ability to have an impact, on an individual, really in a positive way, right? And I feel like that's what this role gives me, is the opportunity to really do some good within somebody's life, because this is a very complex, hard to navigate, world where there's almost too information, and how do you kind of scale that down and make it relatable to the average person that's not reading the Wall Street Journal and watching CNBC every day.
Yeah, that's something I've picked up on too, is that you clearly have an interest in trying to help people, right? Would you say that a lot of that can help support your desire to figure things out, maybe work longer hours, maybe get told no a couple more times? Would you say that kind of supports that? Because I can't imagine that if it was a job that you didn't necessarily like or didn't necessarily have a desire to a purpose to what you're trying to do, that you might not be willing to do those things.
Right. Absolutely. So again, the two kind of words that come to mind there for me, advocate. We have a strong sense of feeling that we're an advocate for our clients, because again, they're not going to have the answers. So we have to sometimes filter through our own company and or industry for them. And then during the COVID crisis, my wife came down and I was on a WebEx, and we had a coach speaking to us and a professional sports psychologist, and he works cool. with the University of Alabama and Nick Saban, and he used to work with the Eagles and won Super Bowls and all that stuff. And
cool.
The terminology that he used that she always reminds me of is financial first responder. So again, it's just this feeling and this weight of not so much burden, but obligation to our clients, that we have to be, that person for them. That's going to help them sort this all out.
But I think it's important to note that you chose that.
Yeah.
Right? You chose to put yourself in that position, which again, I think is important for young people that are choosing a career. If you don't care about solving the problem, what is going to make you so creative and inspired to figure out a solution for those types of people?
Yeah. I would find it hard in any business that if you don't have that passion or that desire to really be successful.
Yeah. That's really cool. So like I said, I want to try to get now more into as things kind of scaled for you, and maybe what some of the emotions that you went through at the time. Can you tell us any time where, I have to imagine that there had to been a time where it wasn't like this, right? You'd like to think that every single year was just like this, perfect. But was there ever a point where it could have been even 6, 7, 8, 9 years into the business that things took a downturn, or you were uncertain or scared? And could you walk us through what happened and how you were kind of able to fight through that?
Truthfully, we've had a good growing business, and markets have been helpful. There's certainly been times throughout the career where markets have had some corrections, and it's just led to some animosity or some stress. 2018 was one of those moments that I just recall off the cuff, where the Fed was increasing interest rates, and in the fourth quarter of 18, the market basically nosedived about 20%.
Okay.
And I remember being in Canada, because my wife has family in Canada. We were there on Christmas Eve, and I remember getting multiple phone calls, and I just, not looking at the financial news and media too often because it's the holidays. I was just like, oh man, this is rough. I don't know what we're going to do. Clients are scared. I should really be home. Yeah. And I remember that being a pretty trying time.
That brings up an interesting point for me. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm sure over time you will experience at some point things will take a turn and you might need to adapt to it at that point. But what you were saying in that moment was that you were stressed about that person or other people's needs, other people's situations. Mm-hmm. You are holding that and maintaining that. I mean, we talked about $600 million in assets under management. That's a lot of responsibility, right? Can you tell us a little bit, and this might be for people that are a little more experienced maybe, that also have a lot of responsibility to other people. How do you shut down? How do you keep that separate from when you go home and spend time with your wife and kids? And I know nobody's perfect at that, but how have you gotten better at that over time?
Yeah, so it's real easy to do that when you have a 6'4" and two that are 3 years old. They don't want to talk about money and finances at this age. Yeah. But I do struggle with that. So I'm glad you brought that up because, it's hard to find that balance. And I truly have to be intentful to separate the two. So one of the things that's been to my demise here lately is that instead of desktops at the office, they gave us laptops. So what that means is that it's much easier to take that laptop home, connect when you get there, and go right back to work. So, that is an area of opportunity for me. And the only thing that I can speak to is that, I have to be of the mindset where I'm very intentful to say, all right, work's done, bring on family, and let's, have a little bit of peace and enjoyment outside of the office.
Yeah. And I think it has to come from you being content and proud of what you did accomplish that day. And if you don't feel that way, it's not going to feel good when you go home to your wife and kids because you're worried about the fact that, hey, I could have done more for my clients today, right? But right. I think you probably feel a lot better spending time with wife and kids when you've gone and done a really good job at work.
Yeah, and I think time management and time blocking, can help you in that regard. If I have my day structured in a way where I'm going, every half hour or every hour and I'm doing 2 or 3 meetings and I'm helping another advisor in my office when I'm in the capacity of resident director, I do think that makes for a good day, right? Where I've helped some clients, I've helped some coworkers, now I feel kind of content and at ease where I can enjoy the family and be there for them, show up and be present.
Would you say that you're very strategic with your time in general?
Have to be. Yeah. Even more so now than ever. And
is that something that you've always had to do in your role? I know you were only responsible for yourself, but I have to imagine that you did have to balance hitting the phones and then also managing what was going on in the meantime, right?
Yeah. So over time, as the business has grown, we've had to instill more trust in teammates, and you have to be able to delegate. And for somebody like myself, where being in control, being a little bit of a micromanager is important to me, that is another area of opportunity where I can feel comfort delegating and knowing that a teammate's got it and I don't have to be involved in every single decision throughout the practice and throughout the day.
Yeah. But that just means you have a high expectation for what needs to get done, and there's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, you feel service to the people that you guys are servicing, right? And so right. I think that's a good thing. But no, so I'd like to hear again more. So what brought you into the position of getting offered the position that you're in now? What were the conversations leading up to that point in the past few years? And was it something that you ever saw coming? Was it something that you saw for yourself that you wanted? Or was this completely out of the blue?
Yeah. So truthfully, I did see it coming and I did envision it, early on in my career. What brought it on? It's funny to reflect on that now that I'm in the role, because as I think about, my course and my trajectory at Merrill, I now see that I was being groomed for something like this. And it started off in, smaller leadership type roles where at first I was in charge. I was an assistant to what they called the PMD, which is the training program, the complex coordinator. And then I eventually became the PMD complex coordinator. And then that kind of morphed into like an advisory council to management. So, you just looking back, you see that this was all kind of done with some intent, on behalf of whoever was in the position before, that they're grooming you. They're kind of coaching you up in these other smaller roles so that you eventually go into a larger.
Yeah. I mean, there were all these tests. It almost seems like over the years where maybe you just thought it was like, I got to do what I got to do, but they might've been looking at it more so as, okay, let's see how he does with this. Okay. Let's see how he does with this. And I think that shows very much so how important it is to not take for granted or come into work complacent. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, being very intentional with your time, being very strategic with your time, and ultimately trying to do the best you can every single day is what allowed you to have the opportunity that you have. It didn't just fall in your lap. You obviously performed over time.
Right.
And that's what gave you that opportunity.
Yeah. And I will say that the outgoing resident director is also someone who I've really looked up to, and who he's been a mentor for me over the years as well. And, he's a practitioner just like me, but he's held a lot of leadership capacities. And the thing that I've always seen about him, and the thing that I'm going to try to mimic, and I think that we've been there for Will and Riley, is that you have to be willing to devote and give back time to individuals that are not at your stage of career yet.
Yeah. So building that team and being able to understand that even though you could be doing something for yourself personally, it's gonna be better off that you.
Well, and we talked about that, right? It's like you mentor with the goal of helping them, but you end up getting so much more in return.
Yeah.
That it's almost a detriment to you if you don't do it, right?
Yeah.
You're missing an opportunity if you're not taking the time to, have coffee, to have a 15-minute conversation, with what's hot to that person at that particular time.
But in addition to that, though, I will say that that's something very much so it sounds like you learned, right? You watched other people do that with others, and you saw
people did it with me,
and people did it with you. Exactly. So it was something that you learned over time. And I think, again, re-emphasizes the point of mentorship and seeing people before you do it. Because I think people can get in a position where they think that they're alone and no one else has ever been through what they've been through. And I think it's important from that note that's where I think mentors are so huge, is because they can say, I went through that. I experienced that. I felt that. And now this is how I was able to figure it out.
Right.
So that's a huge, huge piece. I'd love to get now into what's next. What do you see for yourself in terms of what's next? Or is that something that you haven't spent much time? I know you just got launched.
This 2 seconds, just, getting acclimated to the new role. But no, we continue to have high aspirations for the business, and we're at 600 million ish right now. The goal would be to take that to $1 billion in short order, and to continue to grow and build out our team with good, able-minded professionals that have the mindset of willing to serve others.
Yeah, I know. What does that trajectory look like in terms of like what could your position look like as you move down the road? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of really successful teams that maybe don't take on as much responsibility from the leadership perspective. Is that accurate, or am I wrong in that?
No, I'd say the vast majority of teams, don't have a leadership presence.
Oh, okay.
With respect to what I'm kind of doing right now with the office.
Yeah.
They kind of run in their team and their silos, and they manage their clients, and that works for most people. And as we talk about growing and taking this to the next level, that would certainly be the capacity, that I look to continue to hone in on is how do we take our advisory practice from 600 million to $1 billion in assets under management.
What's the time?
5 years.
5 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for perspective then, so it took you guys, so what, can you give me the lay of the land in terms of when you came in, 6 years in, you said you partnered up with Paul?
Mm-hmm.
What were you guys at that point?
80 million?
80 million?
Yeah.
Okay. So it took you, would it be 10 years? 10 years to get it to 600 at this point?
Today. Yeah.
And so you're trying to pretty much double your time, or right, doing half the amount of time is ultimately what you're looking to double where you're at.
Yeah.
That's pretty special. You think you've got the team to do it? Is that ultimately what gives you that confidence? Or
yeah, I do think that we have the team and we have the core in place, but it's likely going to take more additional resources, and that might look like another FA. It might look like another client associate where you can build out that capacity and again, bring in people with different temperaments, talents, and convictions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to wrap things up with getting into a little bit about your advice to others in regards to your experience, right? So there's two pieces to this. One is going to be, I want it to be more vague. And the other I ask that is more specifically geared towards people that are going into financial services. So,
okay.
I guess we'll start with that. So if you had three pieces of advice going back to, again, day one, you have nothing, you're just getting out of school. And you can even, if you want to even go further back into when you're just starting in pursuing school, it could be as simple as getting an internship or something along those lines. What would be the three most important pieces of advice that you would go back and tell, say, yourself or someone in your situation where you don't have any credibility or status at that point?
I definitely think that you need to get educated on the business. So what I mean by that is people often have this idea of, hey, I want to go into this, but they have no idea what this is. They don't really know the nuts and bolts of what it is. So it could be something as simple as calling people, maybe 5 people from different firms and seeing if you might be able to shadow them, seeing if you might be able to pick their brain, say, hey, I'm this, young, eager student. I'm ambitious. My goal is to be a financial advisor and I want to learn what it means to be a financial advisor. Can we spend some time? Because my goal is that when I graduate, I'm going to get into the field and maybe I'd be a nice addition or resource to your team. So kind of groom me prior to graduating college.
I think that's a big one, by the way, just because I think that you hit that right on the head. I think there's a lot of people that say, I want to be in med device sales, or I want to be in real estate, or I want to be in financial services, or whatever that is.
Right.
And they just look at someone that does it that maybe makes a good amount of money, and they think that that's enough to say, if I just go and start doing that, I'm going to be in that position. But I think it's very important, based on what you said, of making sure that industry or that business or the position that you're in fires you up and gets you excited enough to actually want to solve the problem to the degree that you have. Because I think that's the only way that you get to and have the success that you've been able to create is through that desire. You might not have had that in another industry or something that you didn't care about as much.
Right.
So,
yeah. And I think if you ultimately find a good mentor and someone that's going to spend some time with you, one of the things that I would like to do with somebody that if they ask me that question is I'd try to help them craft their why and their story. And all right, so let's start to think about this. You enter the industry day one and you're slated with business development and turning, basically, cold introductions to prospects and to clients. Why are you in this field? What makes you different? And then also, how are you going to target that particular industry or that particular individual? So what's your story behind it and what's the why?
And does it fit into what you're trying to execute?
Exactly.
Okay. So that's number one was that, getting the lay of the land, you could say, of what that industry looks like. What would be some others? So
one of the things that I did, and I think it gives you more credibility and more marketability, is when I did that internship, I got licensed. I got my 7 and my 63. You need a firm.
You got to speak English for me there. Not smart enough for that.
Your security 7 is your securities registration.
Okay.
And your 63 is like a state license.
Okay.
Okay. So that was great about the internship. I got paid to basically go and study, and I got these licenses. You can't sit for your 7 unless a firm sponsors you, but you can sit for what I'll call your pre-7 exam, your SIE. So for somebody that is looking to be marketable, they can take that initiative on their own, take the test, and then come to the employer and say, I've already taken this. I'm ready to go.
So that's 2 parts. You're hitting pretty hard on the preparation part of things, where you're ahead of the game in terms of so many different, you know what you're getting yourself into, you know what the industry looks like, plus you're coming into the industry with more accreditation than anybody else. So that's huge. What do you have a third one for us? Specifically in that industry?
I would say that in today's day and world, with everybody moving more digital, maybe having a good marketing presence online, so beginning to scale your LinkedIn network.
Okay.
LinkedIn was something that I used early on. I like to consider myself an early adopter of LinkedIn. And
well, if it would have, was it 2000? Was it around?
No, it wasn't that early, but it was probably 2012, 2013, something.
Yeah,
like
no, that's definitely early for sure, especially for using it that capacity.
Yeah. So I think if you can start to build out a professional profile and begin to connect with people, whether in the industry or within your target market of who you're going to focus on, I think that gives you a leg up.
Okay, very good. We appreciate that. Next, I want to get more into, so this is going to be more maybe mindset, more overall things that for young people, or even, it doesn't even have to be necessarily young people, but people that maybe haven't found something that they're really passionate about, haven't found their way and don't know what direction to start. What would be some keys to starting with no confidence and no belief in what you're doing to being able to get started?
Yeah. So having a mentor, I think, is one. We've kind of hit on that at length throughout this. Interviewing and exploring different field paths and kind of digging out leaders or successful people within industry to target and to kind of just hear their story and see if they'll sit down with you. What else? I would try to be involved, so have different circles, that are going to expose you to different things, right? So, you might have some athletic affiliations. You might be involved in some groups with church. You might have some affiliations with, your university, but try to meet people from different walks of life that are going to give you different exposures so that you can learn what it is that you're truly passionate about.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have one more? I'm going to challenge you a little.
Oh man. What else?
Maybe I'll get a little specific for you. Maybe about just overcoming fear to do something, to act, to get out there and do it.
Yeah. So it's, we always talk about putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, right? So, how you grow confidence in that is simply by acting, right? There's no action guys, and then there's action guys.
Yeah.
And action gals, and you just have to go out there and do it, So I promise you, as much as it feels uncomfortable, you're going to gain confidence and take away, far more than you put in. Apart from that, there's certainly all types of different books on confidence and self-starting and, different things that will prep you to get going.
Yeah. I mean, you referred to it in a number of different ways, but just getting educated on a lot of these things are huge. I mean, it's learn a little bit about mentorship, learn a little bit about what other people are doing that have success, because I think success does leave clues. And if you're able to follow and watch people that have done it before you, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to follow what someone else has done and then start to formulate your own way through that.
Right.
So I think it's really cool that you're able to hint on how many different ways you can kind of get educated on what you're getting yourself into and what you might have interest in.
Mm-hmm. And again, I think a lot of it comes back down to, being curious and asking the questions.
Yeah.
And not being afraid of asking, in order to get what you want to get out of something.
Yeah. That it definitely, you showed a number of different ways throughout your career that you had to have courage, and even when it was lonely and you were the only one in the office making those phone calls, you had the courage to do it. And then from there, it was, you had the courage to maybe voice the fact that, hey, Paul, I would be interested in scaling and growing, and I want to have a bigger role in this company. And then you had confidence to then become a leader, and you continued to scale and show that throughout your career. So you having the confidence to be able to step up and do what was hard and do what maybe others wouldn't do is something that I admire a lot about what you've done. So
Thanks, buddy.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right. Well, everybody, I want to thank you all for making the time to learn today and believing in the possibility that life can be better and challenging yourself to grow. I hope today you guys got one step closer to your dream life, and never stop pursuing precision. All right, everybody. So that is going to conclude our episode with Tony Benvenuti. I'm now going to spend the time going over the 3 most important things that I learned from Tony Benvenuti in this interview. 1, getting comfortable doing uncomfortable things can breed incredible amounts of confidence. During this interview, Tony talked all about the beginning of his career and when he was sitting in conference rooms making hours and hours and hours worth of cold calls to people that he didn't even know if he was talking to the right person. He talked about getting a list of names and ultimately having to cold call these names for hours on end just to even get the opportunity to talk to them, let alone land the deal. And so obviously this is a very uncomfortable situation and something that he was putting himself out there on a continual basis for hours and hours and hours at a time. But what he gained from this is the humility to be able to just cold call people without any fear of what they were going to think of him or the negative feedback he would receive, because at the end of the day, he knew he was going to receive the results that he was after. He was going to need to prove himself in this industry. And ultimately what that did was give him the first year under his belt to gain some success. And from there, he was able to build upon that. 2, get to know the industry that you're looking to get into from the inside out. So when Tony and I spoke about getting into a specific industry, many people look at things from a very much so a surface level. They don't really dig deep into what they're looking to get into. And what we discussed was so important was understanding what it actually meant to be a financial advisor or a real estate agent or a number of different industries that you could go into. But he expressed continually how important it was to get a mentor and really dig deep into what their days look like, what the time that they needed to commit to getting to where they were, all the little details in regards to what allowed them to get to where they are, so that you know what you're getting yourself into and can understand and make a logical decision on if it's going to be something you're willing to put the time and energy into. 3, you cannot sit around and wait for the perfect time for success to hit. So Tony began his career in 2008, which for most of us, we know in 2008, this was one of the biggest financial crises that we've seen in our history. And many people could have gotten discouraged, been frustrated, and just said, this isn't my time. This isn't a good time to start in this industry. But instead, Tony looked at it as an opportunity, as there was lots of change and movement happening in regards to people wanting to have their money in certain places or be concerned about who to trust and who not to. He took it as an opportunity to set himself apart from others, and he turned that really scary and uncertain time into a huge opportunity for him to begin his career and set him on a path towards exactly where he ended up, which is an incredible place. So that is going to conclude episode 5 with Tony Benvenuti. This was an amazing one. Again, those were the 3 things that I took most from this interview, and I'm sure you guys learned much, much more, but I'm telling you, this is getting more and more exciting as we're starting to have contrast between all the different guests that we have on and seeing different perspectives from different industries. So I hope you guys are continuing to follow along. We can't wait to see you in the next one, and never stop pursuing precision.